Above Challenger Deep, the Western Pacific looks like ordinary blue water moving beneath an ordinary sky. If you begin descending here, nearly 11 kilometers of ocean separate sunlight from the trench floor. The destination is the deepest surveyed region of the Mariana Trench, not a perfectly fixed point. Different high-quality surveys produce slightly different depths because position, sound speed, tides, and processing matter. That uncertainty measures meters, while the journey itself crosses an entire architecture of ocean. The vehicle must leave waves, daylight, warmth, and easy rescue far behind. Every added meter increases pressure and reduces the surface to a more distant memory. The walls do not form a narrow vertical crack descending directly beneath the ship. Challenger Deep contains broad, elongated depressions within a much larger curving trench system. Its floor can hold soft sediment, scattered rock, drifting particles, and living organisms. Direct visits confirm those scenes only along limited tracks and landing sites. Sonar supplies wider terrain, but its processed images are measurements rather than illuminated photographs. The journey, therefore, combines observed fragments with carefully constrained geological interpretation. Its central mystery is how a dynamic planet, a fragile machine, and life meet at maximum ocean depth. The hatch closes, ballast settles, and the bright surface becomes our starting line. The Mariana Trench formed where the Pacific Plate bends and descends beneath the smaller Mariana Plate. This subduction creates a deep boundary marked by earthquakes, deformation, and volcanic activity farther west. As you cross the first tens of meters, pressure rises fastest in proportional terms. Sunlight still fills the water, and surface plankton occupy a world powered directly by photosynthesis. The submersible remains surrounded by familiar blue because shorter, visible wavelengths travel farthest. Below the main sunlit zone, photosynthesis becomes impossible as usable illumination dwindles. Temperature generally falls through the upper water column toward the cold, deep ocean. Small drifting bodies and sinking debris replace the textured landscape of the surface. Around the twilight region, animals exploit the last daylight for concealment and detection. Some migrate upward at night, feed, then descend before daylight increases visual risk. The light cue triggers movement, and darkness reduces exposure to sight-hunting predators. Below roughly 1 kilometer, direct sunlight no longer provides a meaningful visual field. Exterior lamps now reveal only a small moving island surrounded by black water. Pressure has climbed to around 100 times surface pressure, yet most descent remains below. The crew survives because a pressure hull keeps cabin conditions near those at the surface. Outside, seawater bears against every viewport, seal, cable, and structural joint. Inside, life support removes carbon dioxide, supplies oxygen, and manages heat and humidity. The hull's shape distributes compression, while careful material testing addresses tiny flaws. No human tissue has adapted to the ambient pressure surrounding this cabin. Engineering maintains a boundary between ordinary physiology and Haddle conditions. Past several kilometers, the vehicle enters cold water that changes only slowly with additional depth. Falling particles appear briefly in the lamps before disappearing above or below. Many specks carry carbon from distant surface ecosystems toward deep consumers. Multibeam sonar maps the trench by timing acoustic echoes across wide swaths. Because sound speed changes with water properties, depth calculations require corrected profiles. Pressure-based depth sensors provide another measurement, but they also require calibration and gravity corrections. Agreement between independent measurements strengthens a depth estimate without making it timeless. Tides move the sea surface, sediment can shift, and future processing can refine coordinates. The name Challenger Deep therefore identifies a region containing several exceptionally deep basins. It does not imply one permanent painted marker at the ocean's absolute lowest grain. At about 6 kilometers, the descent crosses into the Haddle Zone, associated with trenches. The term comes from Hades, yet the environment is physical rather than mythical. Pressure now exceeds hundreds of times the atmosphere, altering membranes, proteins, and chemical equilibria. Hadal organisms maintain cellular function through biochemical adaptations inherited across generations. Those adaptations have limits, and life is not distributed uniformly along every trench slope. Deep topography funnels sediment, while earthquakes and gravity can move material downslope. Organic debris may accumulate in depressions, creating patchy food supplies on the floor. Lander cameras and baited samplers directly record visitors at selected points. Bait changes local behavior, so an aggregation around it does not represent undisturbed abundance. Amphipods detect chemical cues, approach the food, feed rapidly, and disperse material through the site. That cue action sequence demonstrates effective scavenging without revealing every natural meal. Submersible windows offer human observation, but lamps, noise, and vehicle movement alter the immediate scene. Sediment clouds raised by landing can obscure the very floor being studied. At 9 kilometers, nearly 2 kilometers of descent can still remain. The pressure difference across the hull approaches 1,000 surface atmospheres. Acoustic communication carries limited information upward, with delays and possible interruptions. An ascent cannot be immediate because the vehicle must release ballast and traverse the full water column. Redundant systems reduce risk, but no design eliminates every possible failure. Reaching the floor is therefore an engineering event as much as a geographic arrival. The final approach reveals pale sediment brightened by lamps beneath immense overlying water. Challenger Deep is cold, dark, and under more than 1,000 times surface atmospheric pressure. When you look through the viewport, visibility ends where the artificial beam dissolves into suspended particles. The apparent emptiness beyond that beam is unknown space, not evidence of absent life. Microbes inhabit trench sediments and transform organic compounds arriving from above. They consume usable material, alter surrounding chemistry, and return nutrients to local cycles. Scavenging amphipods move across the bottom, despite pressure that would collapse an unbalanced hollow housing. Their membranes and proteins function within a narrow, evolved chemical environment. Removing them rapidly to surface pressure can damage bodies and complicate laboratory interpretation. Samples must therefore be preserved or maintained carefully. If researchers seek undistorted physiology. Other trench animals occupy shallower Haddle slopes, where pressure and food conditions differ. Finding a species somewhere in the Mariana Trench does not prove it lives at Challenger Deep's greatest depth. This distinction prevents broad regional records from becoming false bottom sightings. The trench also receives human-made materials transported by currents, sinking debris, and food webs. Debris observed during one dive proves local presence, not an even carpet across the abyss. Contaminants detected in trench organisms show that remoteness does not guarantee isolation. These findings connect consumption and waste at the surface with ecosystems almost 11 kilometers below. Subduction hazards add another human stake because the same plate boundary generates major earthquakes. Bathymetry helps scientists model slopes and deformation, although it cannot predict individual earthquakes. The trench is also a natural laboratory for testing life's response to pressure and scarcity. Exploration earns value by measuring this place accurately, not by exaggerating it as an alien world. Future journeys should revisit established sites so genuine change can be separated from mapping differences. Repeated multi-beam surveys can refine basin shape and reveal major sediment movement. Calibrated landers can monitor temperature, currents, chemistry, and animal visits over longer intervals. Careful sampling can test how microbial activity varies between slopes, channels, and deepest depressions. Pressure-retaining equipment may show which biological functions persist under authentic hadal conditions. When you compare new images with old ones, identical lighting and scale will matter enormously. Unclear shapes should remain unidentified until multiple views or physical samples resolve them. Precise depth claims should publish their reference surface, corrections, uncertainty, and coordinates. The first crewed arrival by Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh in 1960 proved a protected human descent was possible. Later robotic and crewed missions expanded observation, but their tracks still cover only fragments. The next decisive evidence may come from patient repetition rather than a deeper numerical record. Ballast eventually releases, and the vehicle rises through the same black layers it crossed downward. Daylight returns only near the end, compressing 11 kilometers of experience into a bright ceiling. Below, Challenger Deep remains a changing trench region measured with increasing accuracy, but never viewed all at once. The journey ends where it began, above ordinary waves concealing Earth's deepest directly visited ocean floor.